So, let's get right into it. We're going to start off with Uncut Gems. Uncut Gems is the newest film starring Adam Sandler, which is directed by the brothers Josh and Benny Safdie. It was given its limited release on December 13th, followed by its wide release yesterday on Christmas Day. The film was also scripted and edited by the Safdie brothers, as well as Ronald Brownstein. In the cast, Sandler is joined by notables such as Idina Menzel, Lakeith Stanfield, Julia Fox, NBA All-Star Kevin Garnett, playing himself, as well as sports radio host Mike Francesca and musician The Weeknd in small roles. Now, the official runtime for this film is 2 hours and 15 minutes. And for that entire runtime, that movie is pure insanity. If your nerves can handle the pressure of a jackhammer, you're going to have a great time with this one. If you have a nervous condition or a PTSD of any kind, I'm not going to recommend that you see this movie. So, taking us back to 2012, Sandler plays a jeweler in Manhattan's Diamond District with a destructive gambling problem named Howard Ratner. Throughout the course of about a week, Howard finds himself paying the consequences of all the times he's bitten off more than he can chew, such as struggling to pay off debts to ruthless collectors. He also tries to maintain what little respect he has from his family, particularly from his wife Dina, played by Idina Menzel, whose problems stem from Howard's affair with his employee Julia, played by Julia Fox. Jesus really forgets to take the wheel after Damani, Howard's clientele recruiter, played by Lakeith Stanfield, brings real-life NBA power forward Kevin Garnett to Howard's store after Howard receives a seemingly valuable Ethiopian gem in the mail. Through a series of poor decision-making, courtesy of mostly Howard, his past and present mistakes collide, and he must find a way to clean up the mess. So, as I stated before, the runtime for this film is about 2 hours and 15 minutes, and throughout that entire film, I found myself constantly fidgeting. There is such a sense of manic chaos throughout the entire time, and a lot of it has to come from, a lot of it really stems from Howard's bad decision makers. He's the kind of person that, as I mentioned before, he's got a terrible gambling addiction, and he's the kind of person whose people skills often put him one step forward and like 5 steps behind. And there's a scene in particular where he is about to pay off something. He's about to finally get himself out of the hole that he's digging himself into. And he just has to raise the stakes even more. He always just has to keep on screwing himself and screwing himself and screwing himself again. That's how bad this guy's problem is. And it always keeps on getting him into more and more trouble. As much as he has his personality flaws, you can't help but want him to get out of this hole that he just seems to dig himself into. But aside from that, there is just the reason why this film stands out from so many others is because the Safdie brothers have such an intriguing use of tension throughout. There are scenes in this film that, of course, may be a bit tense through, in just like, a regular, just regular interactions or just like on the surface. Like, yeah, it might be a little tense. Like, for example, there is a scene where Damani, Howard's, like I said, Howard's clientele recruiter, brings Kevin Garnett into Howard's store for the first time. And of course, it's they're bringing in a celebrity. Of course, things are going to be a little on edge, but throughout this entire film, there's so much going on, and I don't want to give away too much, but there's so much going on, and there's so much going on that you always feel like something bad is going to happen. Something's going to explode. A lot of times, and again, this is in throughout pretty much every other scene in this film. A lot of times, something goes wrong. There are times where it doesn't, and it kind of teases you a little bit, but that's fine. But most of the time, something does go horribly wrong. And then another big reason as to why this film kept my attention for as long as it did is Adam Sandler's performance. He is absolutely miraculous in this film. Yes, the guy from Happy Gilmore and Grown Ups and Jack and Jill is absolutely phenomenal in this movie. I've always believed that underneath all the comic roles that he takes, all like the silly, goofy shenanigans that he does, all the paid vacations that he takes with his friends to make movies, is an incredibly talented dramatic actor. He's proven himself in movies such as Punch Drunk Love, in the Meyerowitz stories, and this particular film is probably his best performance that I've ever seen from him. Some of you might be saying, oh, that's setting the bar pretty low, but if you look at the other times that he's experimented with more dramatic material, then you would think to himself, or think to yourself, like, wow, he's really knocking it out of the park here. He's really tapping into something different. One of the things that stands out so much about his performance is that because of Howard's character, from his manic anger to his electric charisma, there is so much on display here, and Adam Sandler's full acting range is put to great use here. He kills it in every single scene that he's in, which is pretty much every single scene in the film. He disappears into this role, which is someone that's, for someone of his stature and his popularity, that is extremely hard to do. I couldn't help but identify him as the character that he was portraying on screen. That's when I know that that an actor or actress has given a truly great performance. When every time they walk onto the screen and you identify them as the character they're playing, not just the actor or actress themselves. My favorite example to use for this is Tom Hanks in Forrest Gump. Anytime that he walks onto the screen, you automatically identify him as Forrest Gump. Not just like, oh wow, look, it's Tom Hanks again. That's the difference between someone that's given a truly great performance and someone who just happens to be reading lines that in front of a camera that just happens to be turned on. I seriously, seriously hope that he gets an Oscar nomination for this. I think he definitely has the potential to contend. He's getting a lot of buzz for his performance, and rightfully so. But other than him, the supporting cast does a really great job of holding their own against him, particularly Lakeith Stanfield and Kevin Garnett. Yes, the basketball player, former basketball player Kevin Garnett does a great job in this movie. Even though he's basically playing himself, he does such a terrific job of just being in the moment when he needs to be. I'm starting to think that there's like a whole untapped gold mine of basketball players with serious on-screen potential. I remember watching the film Trainwreck with Amy Schumer and Bill Hader. LeBron James was in that movie, and I remember watching him in the trailer, and I thought to myself, oh, whatever. He's just going to be like a just small comic insert here and there. He's not going to be that big of a deal. But when I actually came to watch the film, he had a much more significant role than that. And he was hilarious throughout the entire time. I got to give credit where credit's due. He was very, very funny. His comedic timing was on point. So, between LeBron James in Trainwreck and Kevin Garnett in Uncut Gems, I'm seriously considering whether or not I should just ask my friends as to what other basketball players they think could be, a serious movie star someday. So, that was actually a very, very nice surprise. I didn't think, again, same thing with LeBron James, I didn't think Kevin Garnett would have nearly as big of a role as he did, carry nearly as much weight as he did, but he does. And he carries it very, very well. And I think it's pretty astonishing that the guy who doesn't have much of a background in acting outdoes most of the people in the film who do have a background in acting. So honestly, to Mr. Garnett, I don't know if you're watching this, good for you. Props to you. Another thing about this film, there's a very transportive quality to it. The movie takes place in 2012, and, I wouldn't usually think that a film that takes place only 7 years ago from today, would have such a sense of nostalgia to it. And it's little details that help carry this out. The biggest one that I can think of is something as tiny as the older interface design on Howard's iPhone. It couldn't help but make me think, but wow, it's just a tiny detail like that, but it made me think to myself, wow, I can't believe they actually did that. They actually took the time to go back as small of a time as 7 years ago and put in all these little details that, help establish the setting. So, and it's funny to think that how little details like that make me think just how quickly things have changed within just the last 7 years, how quickly, technology is evolving and stuff like that. But that's another conversation for another day. And on top of its time period and top of the year it takes place, it makes great use of its Manhattan setting, whether Howard's making his next potentially destructive deal in the inner workings of a Nolo jewelry store, or he's just getting the shit kicked out of him and getting thrown into a fountain in the middle of Rockefeller Center. But underneath, or basically in unison with the blistering hostility that this film has to offer, there is a wicked sense of humor. there's a lot of humor. There are a lot of pretty tense arguments throughout the duration of this film, but there's a lot of humor injected into them. And this humor mainly works because of Sandler's delivery. And even then, there are just, little sprinkles of comic relief in places that I wouldn't expect them to be. There's a part towards the end where Howard's girlfriend, Julia, does, and again, I don't want to give away too much, she does something for him that, makes him, of course, happy, and just the way that he reacts to certain things is just hysterical. When he basically just turns to her and says, like, oh my God, I'm gonna fuck the shit out of you tonight. I just couldn't believe it. It just totally threw me for a loop. And I was shocked at the moment, but then, of course, I couldn't think to myself, like, oh, of course, it's Adam Sandler. Of course, he's gonna play someone that would say something like that. So, in terms of awards consideration, it seems to be doing pretty well as far as, like, film critics awards and stuff like that. I think it seriously can contend for Best Picture, Best Director, Original Screenplay, Actor for Adam Sandler, Cinematography, and Editing. This film definitely is one of those films that is firing on all cylinders. It kills it in every single department, and I can't even say it was a pleasant surprise, but it's definitely one of the big standouts for me. Now, as I said before, I tend to, when it comes to reviewing movies, I always like to give them a grade. I tend to give them a grade from 1 to 100%. So, and I do that based on, like, all the aspects of filmmaking, the directing, the writing, the acting, the music, and all the technical and other artistic components of the film. So, since the film immerses us into the grimy underworld of not only underhanded gambling, but also one man's inability to help himself, Uncut Gems is an electrifying dark comedy that proves once again that Adam Sandler is a tour de force performer when given substantive material to work with. I'm going to give Uncut Gems a 97. This is an incredible, incredible film. I highly recommend you check this out. I hope it does well at the box office. Like I said before, it seems to be getting a lot of buzz, a lot of momentum. But again, it can only do so well if you actually go out and check it out. It's so worth the wait. But do not bring anyone who is prone to freaking out at the slightest tense circumstance.